It is Cowboys versus Texans on Monday Night Football. And tonight, we'll talk about it, some matchups that we're looking out for, and some other storylines, to monitor. Let's get to it. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A2Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night here at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with you Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays with quick hitting videos. But tonight, we've got a live show, which I always love, man, and we are one night away from a Cowboys game day, and it is one that has fans feeling not that great. And I'll use a comment here in the chat just to show you what I mean. Now, this is completely justified, and I'm not knocking William for this at all. But William says, hell no, we cannot beat the Texans. And why would we want to beat the Texans? We are tanking for the number one pick. We are not a playoff team. So why win another game, go 3-14, just get the top pick, right? Cam says, man, I say we forfeit. That is Cam's solution. And I understand why Cowboys Nation is feeling how it is feeling. However, the reason why I still like to talk about these games as what they are, football games, and what matchups will be important to be on the lookout for and all of that. Hey, Lynn here says we should start the sell the team conversation. This is how Cowboys Nation is feeling right now, and I understand it. The reason why I still like to talk about these games the way that I do with the matchups and everything is that who really is not tanking? The players are not. Even the coaching staff is not. Because why on earth would the coaching staff tank when they're not even going to be here in 2025 in all likelihood? There's, of course, a small chance that Mike McCarthy and company return in 2025, but I don't think that's the expectation as of today. These guys are trying to go out there and win a ball game, and I did talk on Thursday about how I believe there were some reasons why I thought the Cowboys could upset the Texans. Not my pick, not my prediction, but this game might turn out to be closer than many people think just because the Texans, man, they're not that great in a lot of areas that might cost them against the Cowboys. For example, pass protection-wise, they're not that great. They're one of the teams that is called for the most penalties in the entire NFL. And you, Cowboys fans, know as well as anyone how that can cost you a game against any given opponent. So there are some reasons to believe the Cowboys could end up winning this, but I totally understand, man, the fact that a lot of people are like, man, Cowboys should just straight up tank. And front office-wise, maybe they are, maybe they were all along, going back to the offseason and thinking about a financial reset. I think this is what happened. I think the Cowboys front office, I don't want to say they tanked, but I want to say they knew they were going to have a little bit of a down year and maybe hit the reset button to set up themselves financially for 2025. Not that they couldn't have spent more this offseason, but that they chose not to be just in a better spot after paying Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And when I say better spot, I don't mean football-wise, I mean money-wise. But I do think they kind of underestimated what doing more with less, which is what Jerry Jones said about Dak Prescott in the offseason, meant, what it looked like. I think that's what they underestimated. But I think that coming into this year, they kind of knew they were setting themselves up for a little bit of a down year relative to the past 3 seasons. But I think they underestimated what that was going to look like. Maybe they thought they could get to 9 wins, 10 wins, get to the playoffs, and remain relevant. I don't think they ever thought they were going to be 3-5 before losing Dak Prescott to a season-ending injury. You know what I mean? Mark says, tank, we will just lose. James says, as long like Jerry runs the show, they can lose another one. The real Darrell says, this is not good. This is not a good feeling when your favorite team is doing cardio for the season. Oh boy, what a way to put it. Right? They're just getting to the finish line in other words. But one of the things that will be interesting though about Monday Night Football will be the quarterback position, because I think Cowboys Nation right now is just wondering, what are the Cowboys going to do with Cooper Rush and Trey Lance? I think it's going to be a very, very short leash for Cooper Rush. And the specific reason why I say that is just last week, Mike McCarthy was talking about Cooper Rush like one of the most respected backups in the league. He compared him to Rich Gannon. He said he's as respected as anybody else in the NFL as far as backup quarterbacks go. He was benched by the second half of last week, right? Like, it took one half of football, basically, for Cooper Rush to be benched by the same coach that was giving him flowers like that just last week. He was bad, guys. Like, I'm talking about real bad. I'm talking about at times looking at the tape and wondering, did the sun hit Cooper Rush on that particular play and he was blinded by it, even though the sun marks on the field were on the opposite side of the field? Because it was bad. At times, the vision was just, I don't know if it was the vision, I don't know if it was the decision-making, but Cooper Rush was throwing to no one at times and just inaccurate across the board as he piled up 45 passing yards somehow. And I'm not here to say Trey Lance was much better. I'm not here to say Trey Lance is the savior of the Cowboys 2024 season, but he does provide you with some stuff that Cooper Rush doesn't, which I think we've known all along. That starts with his legs, the fact that he can create some stuff as a runner, the fact that he can pull the football instead of handing it off to Rico Dowdle will in turn help Rico Dowdle run for a little bit more yards, right? Because he's the +1 theory of option football. Defenses have to account for the quarterback running the ball. And I think that's what Trey Lance could unlock for your offense at this point after watching the tape of last week's game. Not to say that I'm a high on Trey Lance, not to say that I'm blindly optimistic about what he can bring to the table, but I would much rather turn to Trey Lance at this point. It's going to be Cooper Rush, though, per the Cowboys coaches. My question is how short of a leash it's going to be against such a good defense, because that's another part of this equation, man. This defense, it's tough. They don't have Will Anderson, which is huge for this one. He has been ruled out over the weekend. That is a second-year edge rusher, opposite of Daniel Hunter. One of the big things that the Texans have been able to do this year is get to the quarterback. That is mostly because of Daniel Hunter, but he's been helped a lot by his teammates because he's the deep defensive line. It was pretty much revamped from last year to this one. A lot of small free agent signings and acquisitions, but still a lot of injection of talent for that unit. And I think this is the kind of game where you're going to see a dilemma for the Cowboys where they are like, we want to throw the football in several instances, but we've got a quarterback that we don't necessarily trust overcoming the offensive line woes. And there's someone like Daniel Hunter who is turning back the hands of time and looking like a prime version of Daniel Hunter. And he's going to go up against Terrence Steele for the most part, because that's where he plays the most. Daniel Hunter was out there spinning and making Penei Sewell from the Lions look like a fool. That doesn't bode well for somebody like Terrence Steele. Now, that's not a knock on Penei Sewell, by the way. It was actually a pretty even matchup when you look at the tape and you look at the entire game. But Daniel Hunter still recorded 8 pressures last week versus the Lions' offensive line. It's going to be bad against the Cowboys in that area of the field, which is why I wonder if this is going to be a game where Cooper Rush doesn't get benched, because maybe it's a game where they hand it off to Rico Dowdle like 30 times. Now, Rico has been... The Cowboys... Here's the thing about the running back situation in Dallas. Mike McCarthy said this week that the lead back was Rico Dowdle. Now, if you've been watching with attention these last few games, you know that's been the case pretty much going back to Pittsburgh, right? The Cowboys have started to feed Rico Dowdle the ball much more than whoever number 2 happens to be that day, whether that's Zeke or whether that's Dalvin Cook. Rico is getting the ball more than his running back teammates. What hasn't happened, though, and it didn't even happen last week, without Dak Prescott, they haven't really feed him 20 carries one game, 25 carries one game. And I kind of wonder if that's going to be the game plan for tomorrow. Because if you don't trust the pass pro, and you don't trust Cooper Rush to overcome the pass pro woes, what are you going to do? I'm thinking the Cowboys might go out there and they might ask Rico Dowdle, hey, so we said this in public, Rico. We said this about you. We're treating you right. We're calling you running back one. Now we're going to use you as a legitimate cowbell, and you're going to go out there and have 25-plus carries. I'm honestly intrigued by what can happen if you do that. Because you know what I'm not intrigued about? I'm not intrigued about Cooper Rush challenging the Texans secondary. Because here's the thing. The Texans secondary has allowed the third fewest average yards of separation, according to Next Gen Stats, against opposing wide receivers. And the Cowboys are the third lowest separation, have the third lowest separation average across the entire NFL. So it's a bad combo, and it's a backup quarterback throwing the ball, and the pass protection is not great. I wonder if the Cowboys just want to run the ball over and over again on this one. Now, since you have Rush there, chances are when you do take some chances in the passing game, you might be intrigued to do so with some play action behind max protection and all that, which worked in 2022 when Cooper Rush went on a 4-1 run. But back then, you had a decent offensive line, and right now you don't. Right now, you have a very problematic offensive line. So it's going to be more of quick passing and all that, and the question is who can do that more consistently. Is it Cooper Rush or is it Trey Lance? Calvin says at this point, man, it's time to play Trey Lance, and I wouldn't disagree with that personally. Francisco says if Rush plays like he did last week, then I think after the first quarter, it will be Lance. Still has never been anything but okay at right tackle, he adds. And I think that's, honestly, at this point, pretty fair. I think Terrence Steele had a very good season, right, at tackle. Paid him because he was like this work ethic type of guy, the right kind of guy like they like to call them. But he hasn't been anywhere near great or anything like that. And 2 years removed from his injury, I don't think that's an excuse anymore. Maybe 2023 was, but 2024 has been rough. And at the end of the day, injury or not, I'm not rolling the dice on him in 2025. What's the contract situation for Terrence Steele, though? Whatever the contract situation for him is, I would struggle to put him out there in 2025. And just for context, for those of you who are wondering, the Cowboys would save $4.6 million if they release him, but $13.5 million would go to dead money. Oh boy, that's not great. Now, that's on the offensive side of the ball, man. If you ask me from some of the key matchups that will define the game, I would say Terrence Steele versus Daniel Hunter, and whatever else the Cowboys throw Hunter's way to slow him down. But he is the one guy that can really break the game for the Cowboys. Could absolutely make it such an ugly outing, right? Could be Daniel Hunter. But watch out for those rookie defensive backs that they've got over there on Houston. I've talked about this earlier last week, man. I gotta check the names, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I have not memorized those two names, but the Texans right now, they've got Derek Stingley, who has been good for a while, right? But they also have Aziz Al-Shaair, will play, by the way. He was on the injury report, but he's going to be there. So they have Kamari Lassiter. He's been playing across Derek Stingley, and he's been so good, man, for the Texans so far. And then they've got safety Kalen Bullock. Safety Kalen Bullock filled in for Jimmy Ward, and he has 4 interceptions already. They've been doing some good stuff, man. They've been doing some good stuff. You look at the defense numbers pretty much across the board. They're one of the top units in the entire NFL. That is going to be dangerous. But I think it's going to start with the pass protection. So give me Steele there. And I wonder if like Jake Ferguson is the name to watch on offense because of the rookies and the safeties, because of the corners and the safeties being so good in the Texans. I wonder if the tight end is the guy that has to be the best friend to Cooper Rush / Trey Lance if he ends up getting on the field. But mostly I think the matchup is going to be the running game because, as I said, I think that is going to be the best route to take on this one. I don't want the Cowboys challenging the pass rush from the Texans, and I don't really want them challenging their defensive backfield all that much until it's necessary, right? If this becomes a game that gets out of hand, You're going to have to drop back and you're going to have to throw the football around. But I would much rather challenge their run defense. Not as an indictment on their defense, but as a bet on, I would much rather bet on Rico Dowdle and everyone else winning this game than the pass protection and the quarterbacks and wide receivers even, because as I've said, even them have not been great in generating separation. Isidro says, after Rush is sacked 4 times, Lance will come in. Awesome boxing night at the stadium. Well, except for the main event, says Isidro. Oh man, that Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor fight, number 2, that was awesome. That was an awesome fight. Adrian says, I think you should play with Lance. We don't have anything to lose, and Lance has more things to show and prove than Rush. Lance's legs can help with the running game along with Dowdle. I think that is a big thing. We talked about this earlier. I agree with Adrian here. I think that is a big reason why I would start Lance if it was up to me. The Cowboys are not going to do that. But why I would want Lance in there over Rush, the biggest thing is the fact that Trey Lance can take off and run, but mostly that he can also indirectly make life easier on Rico Dowdle, right? The game is already 6-14. Oh my God, I'm talking about Sunday night right now. Chargers versus Bengals. Wow, that's going to be a game, huh? How about, by the way, Chiefs and Bills? It was a fun one too. But anyways, moving on. Let's talk about the defense. The big matchup on defense, I think there's 2 of them, okay? Matchup number 1 that could go the Cowboys' way, it's Micah Parsons. And here's how I wrote it down on my notes. Everyone not named Laramie Tunsil. Now, Laramie Tunsil has been got this season, right? In a few games. He's had some bad games on tape this season. For the most part, though, Laramie Tunsil is still Laramie Tunsil. He's one of the highest graded pass protectors at tackle in the entire NFL, and he's got some of the best numbers as well. However, if I'm trying to search for a mismatch, and I'm trying to say, okay, I don't have the Marcus Lawrence. I don't have Marshawn Nyland. I don't have a great defense. Because, by the way, Jordan Lewis is not playing on this one, which absolutely sucks. Because I think that's one of the players that I would much rather, like one of the players that I would least want to see hurt, right? But he's ruled out. I'm trying to open up the injury report right now to give you the full information here. Because Trevon Diggs did put together a couple of, full practices and everything, so there's no concern there. But the fact that, Jordan Lewis might not play, obviously is of concern. However, I'm talking about the pass rush here with Micah. I want him on anyone that is not Laramie Tunsil so I can make the most out of that mismatch. On the other side, at tackle, they've got Titus Howard. He's been inconsistent, some ups and downs. I believe Micah Parsons could beat him consistently. But I wonder if this is the game where Mike Zimmer starts to turn up the double-A gap pressures and starts to put Micah Parsons on the guards, isolate him on the guards, isolate him on the center, because those would be capital M mismatch. Like, I'm talking about Micah wrecking some chaos in this game if Mike Zimmer finds a way to do that consistently. But if you put him with Laramie Tunsil and he can handle Parsons, I don't think you will find a lot of other mismatches across your defensive line because you're not that good, straight up, right? With no Lawrence, with no Nyland, with all of the injuries that you have to go through, there's not going to be a mismatch there. But if you find ways to get Micah versus the interior offensive lineman for the Texans, you are going to have some results. Now, let's match up number 2. Number 1 on the defense. Number 2 on the defense, I would say is, and this is the big question that I have, how do you deploy your defensive backs? But Trevon Diggs pretty much has to have a lights out game. And I know Mike Zimmer might not do this because of the way that he's done things. But if I am Mike Zimmer, I wonder if the answer that I would have to the Texans passing attack is getting Trevon Diggs to shadow Nico Collins. Nico Collins is back from injury, and Nico lines up out wide 82% of the time, right? Tank Dell is your other threat. He's at 74% of the time out wide. So the 2 best receivers in Houston, they don't play in the slot all that much. So I wonder if you go into this one thinking, I don't want to see at all Kalen Carson on Nico Collins. Now, I don't want to see Kalen Carson on Tank Dell either, but I definitely don't want to see him on Nico Collins. So I wonder if the Cowboys go like, hey, Jordan Lewis is hurt, so chances are we're going to have to play a different nickel inside. Maybe Easy Mukwamu, maybe the Cowboys get creative with some big nickel type packages. Not exactly sure what they'll do in that area because we haven't really seen Jordan Lewis out a whole lot this season. So I wonder if you go into this one thinking, okay, Diggs, shadow Nico Collins, because maybe the Texans want to try to get Nico Collins inside a little bit more often, knowing that Jordan Lewis is injured. But shadow him, let Kalen Carson try to deal with Mr. Tank Dell with some sort of help from the safeties, and try to hold on for dear life. Because the Texans have been inconsistent without Nico Collins, but now that he's back, they might return to their early season form where they were cooking with Nico Collins particularly. When he got hurt, he was either top 1 or top 2 in receiving yards in the entire NFL. Now, they also had Stephon Diggs. He's out for the season now. So the Cowboys are getting a break there. But I think you got to find a way to really deal with Nico Collins. And I wonder if the best answer with no Lewis, with no Deron Bland, obviously, the best way might be to ask Trevon Diggs to shadow Nico Collins, but we'll see if they do that. I don't think they've done a lot of that so far, so it might also be playing with fire to shift like that halfway through the season. But what do you have to lose, right? I would much rather see Trevon Diggs on Nico Collins myself, honestly. But we'll see how it all plays out. Ultimately, keys to the game for the Cowboys, I would say, gotta pressure CJ Stroud. Absolutely gotta do so. You cannot go into this game thinking, you cannot go into this game and allow the Texans to get the run game going, by the way, because the Texans have been one of the worst rushing offenses in the league, 29th in EPA per play, 31st in success rate. That is a reason why they haven't closed out games. That is a reason why 5 of their 6 wins are one-score games. That's why they took away the ball from Jared Goff 5 times and still lost, because they had a big lead, but they couldn't close it out because they couldn't run the ball. They handed it off to Joe Mixon 25 times, and he averaged 1.8 yards per attempt. So if the Cowboys exploit the fact that the Texans are incapable of running, they might stay in it late in the game and try to find a way to steal it at the end, right? But we have seen moments this season where the Falcons, for example, had an anemic pass rush until they hosted the Cowboys. And then they sacked Dak Prescott twice in the first half. And then another time at least. I don't remember how many sacks he ended up with. I think it was 3. But the Cowboys have had several instances this season when they face one of the worst units at something, and then they look pretty good versus the Cowboys just because they're not up for it, right? So that cannot be the case versus the Texans rushing offense. They really need to stop Joe Mixon and company, or otherwise it is going to be a blowout. Like, absolutely. I think the hope is that the Texans cannot run the ball and then something like that happens. But anyways, I think those are the biggest keys to the game. Here's where I ask you in the chat, what is your prediction? What do you think is going to be the end score for this one? What is going to be the final score between the Cowboys and the Texans? An in-state rivalry renewed, if you will, on this 2024 matchup. By the way, this is going to be Dalton Schultz revenge game. So we're finally getting that. We'll see how that plays out. We were robbed an opportunity, by the way, of seeing Trevon Diggs versus Stephon Diggs. I think that's one of the most sucky things about this game. I would have loved to see that. Trevon lining up versus Stephon, which I don't think we would have gotten a lot of, because I think Stephon Diggs probably would have gotten a lot of time in the slot. But yeah, let's see, man. Texans 27 for Gregory, Cowboys 16. Mam 10 goes 31-14. I'm assuming he's leaning with the Texans. The answer is 24, Cowboys 20. And I'm going to go with something like that, by the way. I think I'm going to go with 21. What was my score? I had a score on a show on Friday, and I would hate to have a different one for you. But it's somewhere along those lines, so give me a second here. Dallas 13, Texans 30 for Isidro. So man, that is just, I don't blame you guys. I don't blame you at all. But you can see how Cowboys Nation feels like right now. But anyways, my pick, it's going to be 23-16. Give me the Texans, though, on this one. It's been a long, long season. It might get even longer. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button for me, and I'll see you on Tuesday. And we'll hopefully be talking about, depends on where you're at, but I would say hopefully we're talking about a win. Because, man, it would be nice to see the Cowboys win a football game, I'm not going to lie. But if your team tank at all costs and let's not enjoy a win until September 2025, then maybe you're hoping for a loss. Personally, I'll enjoy draft season when it gets here. In the meantime, I would enjoy seeing a Cowboys upset, honestly. And I think Cowboys Nation will as well when it ends up happening. So we'll see when we get there. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Sunday night, and I'll see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.